Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host, Mitch. Glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today we have an episode of Commander's 2 Cents. On episodes like these, I give you my own personal take on topics about the format in general and current news. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And while you're at it, subscribe and review our podcast as well. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. So on today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the most played instance in Commander. Now the thumbnail probably also should have said over the last 2 years to be a little more specific, but it was taking up too much room, so I'm just putting it here. Now over the last 2 years isn't exactly of all time, but it does give you a good sense of what some really popular instances have been lately. These instances are staples in Commander for a reason. And today I'm going to talk about what those instances are and why they're staples. Before I get started though, one thing really quick. This data I'm getting from EDH Rec. It is not my data. EDH Rec, while it doesn't have perfect data, is a fantastic resource. Also, for this list, I'm using percentage of possible decks versus the total number of times it's played. Simply put, the reason I'm doing this is because a monocolored card can fit into more decks than a multicolored card can. In my opinion, percentage of possible decks just gives you a better look at what the most played cards are. That's just my opinion, but this is my episode, so you're gonna have to deal with that. And with all that nonsense out of the way, let's get things started. Like most top 10 lists, we're going to start off with number 10. And coming in at 10th place, we've got Path to Exile. Currently, it's just under $5, and it sees play in 29% of possible decks. It's an instant for a white, and it says, exile target creature. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put that card into the battlefield, tap, then shuffle their library. Targeted removal can be very important in Commander, and this is about as efficient as you can get. 1 mana to exile a creature at instant speed is a pretty big deal. That being said, there is a slight drawback. While you are getting rid of that creature for just a mana, you are also ramping that player. Now, obviously that's a trade-off that you're often willing to make, which is why this makes the top 10 list, but it is still a trade-off. But you can actually use this card to your own advantage as well. If one of your creatures is about to die, you can just target it with this. Your creature was going to die anyways, but now you get to ramp. And who says that mono white doesn't have any kind of card advantage or ramp? Just kidding, but in all seriousness, this is a fantastic card for just a white mana. It can deal with pretty much any creature, and it's got a very small drawback. If you need some targeted creature removal for your meta, definitely consider this one. But now it's time for us to move on to number 9. And coming in at 9th place is Mortify. Currently, Mortify is only 25 cents and also sees play in 29% of decks. It's an instant for 1 white black, and it says destroy target creature or enchantment. So this is a flexible piece of removal, and it's budget friendly. That being said, I personally think that this card is highly overplayed. Again, just a personal opinion, but I don't think that I've actually ever included this in any of my decks, and it's pretty much always been budget. There are just better options when it comes to target removal, especially in Orzhov. Unlike Path to Exile, it's not going to exile that creature, it's just going to destroy it, so there are creatures that can get around this with indestructibility or regeneration. And yes, it is flexible because it can get a creature or an enchantment, but there are other cards out there that can get more for you. But really quick, keep in mind that this list is tackling cards over the past 2 years. As of recent, this card has dropped a little bit, but it's still close-ish to the top 10. When it comes to 3 mana removal, I'm going to use Oblation, but you can just go ahead and use your Mortify, that's completely fine too. Speaking of popular instants that I find to be slightly overused, let's move on to number 8. And that card would of course be Putrified, the long-lost cousin of Mortify. Currently it's 21 cents and sees play in 30% of decks. It's an instant for 1 black-green and says destroy target artifact or creature, it can't be regenerated. So whereas Mortify deals with enchantments, Putrified deals with artifacts. But unlike Mortify, this also includes the text, it can't be regenerated. So in those corner cases where people are regenerating creatures, this can come in handy. But again, for the most part, I just think that there are better forms of target removal. Again, this is a look at the past 2 years, and lately this one has been going down like Mortify, but not quite as far as I thought it would. But again, very budget friendly, and in your meta, this might be a fantastic card for you to play. So if you want to run Putrify, or if you want to run Mortify, that is fine with me. But now it's time for us to move on to number 7. And the 7th most popular instant over the past 2 years is Utter End. Currently, Utter End is $1.51 and sees play in 30% of decks. It's an instant that costs 2 white black and it says exile target non-land permanent. There seems to be a pattern here with targeted removal. This one can deal with pretty much anything outside of lands for 4 mana at instant speed. That's a pretty good deal, especially since it exiles it to just completely get rid of it. Taking budget out of the equation, comparing this to Mortify, that 1 extra mana for exiling and it being any non-land permanent instead of just a creature or enchantment is huge. This is a card that can really help you out in a ton of situations, and that's why it sees a lot of play. 4 mana might be a decent amount of mana to hold up, but it's always nice to know that you've got an answer for something if you need it. Again, when it comes to target removal, this is a great option. But now let's move on to number 6. And the 6th most popular instant in Commander over the past 2 years is Brainstorm. Brainstorm is currently 71 cents and sees play in 31% of decks. It's an instant for a blue, and it says draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. Now this might not be the most popular opinion out there, but I think this card is extremely overrated and very much overplayed in Commander. Don't get me wrong, this card is absolutely busted in other formats, but in Commander, it's just not that good. Many players out there are treating this card as if it's an auto-include in blue decks. And to me, that's just not the case. Some decks can really use this card. Decks that can use and abuse the top of their library, this can be fantastic in. But essentially most of the time, it's just a cantrip that kind of exchanges 2 cards out of your hand back on top of your library, and you'll draw into them later. Now, I will say that if you're playing with higher budget decks that have a ton of fetch lands, yes, this card is much better. Putting 2 useless cards on top and then cracking one of your fetch lands to shuffle your library and shuffle them away most likely is great. But if you're not playing with a deck that's got a ton of fetch lands or other ways to shuffle your library, most likely you're just going to draw into those same cards that you just had. I want to mention again really quick that EDH Rec is a fantastic resource. But in my opinion, there are times that people lean a bit too heavily on it and then just make decisions because everyone else is doing certain things. I think Brainstorm is very much a card that many people see on a lot of lists and say, oh, I need to include that because others are. If your deck doesn't care about the top of your library and you're not running ways to get rid of those top cards, then you probably shouldn't be running this. But as always, that's just my opinion. You do whatever you want to do. Moving on though, let's move on to number 5. And the 5th most popular instant in Commander over the past 2 years is Beast Within. Currently, Beast Within is $1.51 and sees play in 34% of decks. It's an instant that costs 2 and a green, and it says destroy target permanent, its controller gets a 3/3 green beast creature token. In my opinion, this one definitely breaks the color pie, and green got away with murder with this one. This can essentially take out anything and everything for 3 mana, and it's exchanging it for a 3/3 beast. In Commander, a 3/3 token is pretty much absolutely nothing. Destroying anything at instant speed for 3 mana is very much something. Green directly being able to destroy creatures is usually not what green does. But this allows green to destroy creatures or whatever else. In my eyes, Generous Gift being printed is basically WotC saying, hey, yeah, we messed up with Beast Within, that was supposed to be white. There's definitely a reason this one sees a crazy amount of play. Again, comparing this to something like Putrified, there is absolutely no comparison. A 3/3 in exchange for destroying anything is a deal that I'll make any day of the week. But perhaps there's an even more effective card coming in at number 4. And that card would be Anguish Unmaking, which is currently $5 and sees play in 36% of decks. It's an instant for 1 white black, and it says exile target non-land permanent, you lose 3 life. So again, 3 mana, just like Beast Within, but this one exiles instead of destroys, and instead of giving a 3/3, you lose 3 life. Life is an extremely expendable resource in Commander. In another format like Standard where you start off with 20 life, you'd be losing more than 10% of your life with this card. In Commander where you start off at 40 life, that's obviously going to be less than 10%. So a small price to pay for exiling anything at instant speed for 3 mana. Now I did say anything, but I should have said non-land, so I guess that's the one thing that Beast Within has above this card. But still, most of the time this is going to get rid of exactly what you need to get rid of for just 3 mana and a very small price. Again, Utter End costs 1 more mana than this, and it has no drawback, but costing 1 less mana is a lot more important than 3 life. This is a fantastic piece for removal, and it's pretty obvious as to why it sees a ton of play. But now let's move on to number 3, and it might actually surprise some people to see this one at 3 and not 1. And that card is, of course, the infamous Cyclonic Rift. This is a $20 card that sees play in 45% of decks. And yeah, maybe that percentage would be a little bit higher if this card was a bit more affordable. Anyway, Cyclonic Rift is an instant for 1 and a blue, and it says return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. But it is rare when it is actually cast for 1 and a blue. Usually you pay its overload cost for 6 and a blue. So essentially then you return all non-land permanents you don't control back to their owner's hands. Yeah, a one-sided board wipe for 7 mana at instant speed is gonna be a very powerful card. This card can definitely be a hot topic in the Commander community on if it's too powerful or not. Regardless, it's a fantastic way to set all of your opponents back or to help you finish out a game. And yes, even though I joked about it not being cast for its usual cost, you can cast it for just 2. So if you're in a tough situation and you need to do that, you can. This is an extremely flexible and versatile card that in many people's opinion is the best board wipe in the game. And again, many people might have thought this was number 1, but it isn't. And that literally might just be because it is a $20 card. But even at $20.90, it somehow sees play in 68,000 decks. For you math majors out there, that's nearly $1.5 million. So try to wrap your head around that. And now let's move on to number 2. And the second most popular instant over the past 2 years is Counterspell. Counterspell is $1.33 and currently sees play in 47% of decks. It's an extremely simple spell. It's an instant that costs blue and it says counter target spell. There really is nothing quite like the original. You know, except for Mana Drain, which is essentially this, but even better, but that's a $100 card. Anyways, Counterspell is fantastic. Countering any spell with no downside for just 2 mana is an incredible effect. Other counterspells generally cost 3 mana and give you something in addition, but you'd rather just not pay that extra mana. And the other counterspells that cost 2 mana either have a downside to them or they have to counter a specific kind of spell. Counterspell is one of the very few cards that says no to pretty much everything for just 2 mana with no downside. So there's definitely a reason why it shows up at number 2. But now it's time for us to move on to number 1. Drumroll please. And the most popular instant in Commander over the past 2 years is Swords to Plowshares. Swords to Plowshares is $1.60 and it sees play in 58% of decks. It's an instant for a white and it says exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to its power. So if you remember all the way back to number 10, we had Path to Exile. Both are extremely similar cards with a slight difference. Path to Exile has the downside of giving a player a land, Swords to Plowshares just gives a player life. And again, we talked about how in Commander, life isn't really that big of a deal. Personally, I would much rather give someone some life than ramp them. Also, Path to Exile is nearly $5 and Swords to Plowshares is only $1.60. Both have been reprinted a decent amount, but I think the main difference is probably because Swords to Plowshares isn't legal in Modern, whereas Path to Exile is. All that means for Commander players and what they care about is, yes, this is cheaper. So this card is cheaper and probably better in most situations than another top 10 card that essentially does the exact same thing. Again, if you need target removal for creatures in your meta, this is a perfect card for you. And at $1.60, it's decently budget friendly. And with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your favorite instant in Commander is and why. And make sure you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons who help make this show possible. I truly couldn't do any of this without your support. If you want to support this channel directly, consider becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There are even tiers where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. You can check out all the Patreon tiers and rewards at patreon.com/commandersquarters. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget Commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.